What is up, YouTube? This is Magnion, and welcome to a brand new music production tutorial video. So today's video, we are going to be learning how to synthesize your own dubstep drums from scratch using Serum 2. This is a video that I've actually been wanting to do for quite a while now, because designing your own drums is a great way of defining your own style as a producer. And the more sounds that you put into your songs that are 100% original, the more your style as a producer will be defined. And drums are a great place to start with that. So we're going to be focusing only on 3 different kinds of drums in this video. We're going to be focusing on kicks, we're going to be focusing on snares, and we're going to be focusing on claps. Now, I would show you how to do hi-hats and cymbals, but unfortunately, I'm not too good at doing that yet. I still got to kind of practice more and figure out some new techniques. But if you are interested in learning how to synthesize your own cymbals, check out AU5's video. I'll link it below. It does a really amazing job explaining how to do this kind of stuff using Serum. So highly recommend that if you want to learn how to synthesize your own cymbals. But we're just going to be focusing on these 3 main drum types in this video. Now, before we begin, just a quick disclaimer. I know there's a lot of bad music production advice on YouTube these days. I don't want to be one of those people who gives bad advice. So if anything I say sounds stupid or fishy, or you just think it's straight up wrong, give me a comment below. I'm happy to have a discussion about it. I want to make sure that I'm not giving bad advice, I guess, on YouTube, because I want to be a good producer as well. All right, so without any further ado, let's jump into Ableton Live and begin. So I'm going to start by showing you guys how to create kick drums, because kicks, in my opinion, they tend to be the most straightforward. Snares and claps tend to be a lot more finicky. Not that kicks can't be finicky in their own right, but all in all, I just think that designing your own kick drums tend to be a lot more straightforward and easier than making snares and claps and whatnot. So we'll start off here. We got an instance of Serum 2 loaded up. And we're going to start just by creating a new MIDI clip, and we're just going to extend it out. You don't really need to do it this long, and then inside of Serum 2 here, first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick a sine wave wavetable. Now, a lot of the times I see people just kind of take the default shapes and just go to a sine wave here, and you can do that if you want, but personally, I prefer something with a little bit more harmonics, specifically this wavetable here, because you can actually change the wavetable position and it just kind of changes the timbre of the sine wave, which can lead to some interesting results once you use the distortion and whatnot. So if you modulate this with an LFO, it can add some interesting results to the timbre. But alternatively, if you really do want to use a default sine wave, what you can also do is just go to this edit function here, the wavetable editor, and you can just kind of add harmonics, and you can add little kind of tiny little characteristics to the sound, which can also lead to some interesting results if you know what you're doing. But I'm just going to keep it simple. We're going to stick with analog BD sine. So what we're going to do first, we're going to make sure the random phase is all the way down to 0. Random at 0 just means it's not going to start at a different kind of phase position. So then we're going to take LFO1 and we're going to attach it to the level of oscillator A. And we're going to set LFO1 to envelope mode. And we're going to take it off BPM sync here. Just put it to Hertz mode. And basically that just means we can change the speed really easily. You can, this part really isn't necessary, but I think it's easy to like kind of really fine tune how long you want the kick to be. And we're just going to create kind of a shape like this. What we're looking for is something that doesn't have a whole lot of attack, because we want the transient for the kick to go kind of in that hole there, in that little pocket. So we're going to make kind of a shape like this. So then next up, we're going to take LFO2 here, and we're going to attach it to the coarse pitch. On Mac here, if you hold Option and Shift and you click this little blue thing, I don't know what that's called, you can actually change the direction of the modulation. So this is just starting from a high note, and it's going to sweep down to the note we have set here. So again, put this on envelope mode, put it on Hertz mode, and this is kind of where the kick sound comes from, because that's all essentially a kick is. It's just a sine wave sweep from the top of the frequency spectrum to the bottom. That's what an EDM kick is per se. Now, some people might just use an envelope instead of an LFO. I prefer using the LFO because then you can actually make multiple points, which can also change the character of the sound, which I think is really important. And dubstep drums just in general tend to be really kind of chunky, I guess. They have a lot of body to them. They're not like your standard kind of 909 kicks where they're just like maybe a short transient in the beginning. Dubstep drums tend to be a little more lasery. So adding multiple points to your pitch envelope can help adjust that character. This can be fine-tuned later, but we're going to keep it like this for now. So from here, I'm going to add that modulation to the wavetable position like I was talking about. So envelope mode, Hertz mode. And you can hear how that kind of changes the character of the sound, which can, again, lead to some interesting results. So that's basically the body of the kick right there. So now let's get into making the transient. So a lot of people tend to just get a transient sample or steal one from another kick and just put it into the noise oscillator. You can do that if you like. Personally, I don't like doing that. I think it's really lazy. And, you know, again, you can get more interesting results if you just make it yourself. So how do you make a transient, you might ask? Well, I will show you how to do that. So we're going to load up the second oscillator and we're going to set the wavetable position to a square wave. We're going to take another LFO. We're going to do LFO 4 and we're going to put it on the level. And we're going to put this up like 4 octaves. Envelope mode, Hertz mode, and we're going to create something really, really super short. Now, I'm actually going to match the speed here of the LFO that's attached to the level for oscillator A, just so it's in kind of the right time. So that's 5.6, so we'll do that here. And we're just going to kind of match it to that pocket. So that's kind of around right there. So now that kind of sounds like crap so far, but don't worry, we will fix it. So we're going to turn on a filter and we're going to set the filter to none because we're going to route this transient to its own bus here in the effects section. And I'm going to set this to a Combs filter. And then what I'm also going to do is I am going to turn on the noise oscillator and I'm going to select a white noise here. And we're going to put the filter up, put the stereo up. We're going to attach this LFO for the level of oscillator B also onto the level for the noise oscillator. And then we're going to FM with the noise, or you can also phase distort with the noise. It doesn't really matter, honestly. I'll just stick to phase distortion. And that's kind of where the transient click comes from. And we're also going to put this LFO 4 on the coarse pitch for the oscillator B. Now from here, we're going to take the filter off of oscillator A, and we're going to put it on oscillator B, and we're going to put it on the noise. And then you can do something like this, and then take LFO 4 and put LFO 4 on the mix, have the resonant all the way up, and there you go. Okay, and then last but not least, we are going to go into oscillator C. We're going to change this to not a spectral. We're going to change it to a sampler. And then this is the point where we're going to layer on like a hi-hat or something. So let's just go, we'll get maybe I don't know. What kind of hi-hat should we use here? I think I'll keep it simple and recognizable. I'll do a virtual riot hi-hat, maybe this one here. So just load that into the sampler. And I'm actually going to turn off pitch tracking. That way it's not like trying to play it at a super low note. And we'll actually put the LFO 1 on here. We don't really need the beginning of the sample anyway. This scan knob here can be used to change the pitch almost. Okay, so now let's go on to the effects. So here in bus 1, this is where the transient's being routed to. So we're going to actually do some processing to that first. So I'm going to do some distortion first of all, and we're going to put it on 0 square. Actually, no, I think we'll put it on linear fold, which just adds more kind of clickiness to the transient. And we can keep fiddling around with the other knobs here now too. Maybe change the pitch of oscillator B. It's not really doing too much, but sometimes, you know, the tiniest change can really influence the timbre of the sound. I think we'll leave it like that for now. So that's all the processing I'm going to do to the transient. Now let's get onto the main effects bus here, and we'll start doing some more processing. So we're going to add some distortion, and I think I'll just kind of add the distortion on an LFO again. Envelope mode, Hertz mode. We're going to kind of match it to this because it's the same length, which was 5.6. So, and feel free to change the different kinds of distortion types. And then we can add a compressor as well. And then we'll use a preset here, 1176 punch, which is just kind of like a pseudo recreation of an 1176 compressor. And we'll just put up the attack a bit. And that'll add to the transient. Actually, we'll put it before the distortion. Now, one thing I'll always do on dubstep kicks is put like an all-pass filter on it. So an all-pass filter is like Disperser, the Kilohertz Disperser plugin. Serum 2 actually has one built in to the filter. It's called Diffuser, and it works pretty much the exact same way as the Disperser plugin. Although I find with this, you have to be a little bit more careful with it. But as you can hear, it's adding to that laseriness of the sound that we're going after for these kinds of drums. Pretty cool. Something else I'm going to do, I'll add some stereo to the sampler here with the unison. I forgot to put the random all the way down on the oscillator B, but yeah, that's something you should be doing as well. I don't know why I didn't do it before, I just kind of forgot. So that's pretty cool. What we're going to do now is we're just going to bounce this to new track. And that's kind of what our kick looks like from here, which is a proper kind of shape for a kick. Now, I'm going to tackle post-processing now. We're not going to contain this all inside of Serum 2 just because there are kind of some more techniques you can use. I use a lot of third-party plugins, so you don't necessarily have to follow me along here if you don't have the plugins that I am using. But if you do, or you have similar stuff, you can kind of follow along. This on its own, just out of Serum, isn't that bad of a kick to begin with. So you could probably use this as is, but I'm going to show you guys some post-processing tricks anyways, and what I normally do when I post-process my kicks. So one thing I always do is I use this plugin called M Freeform Equalizer. And basically what this is just kind of like a matching EQ, or you can use it to match EQ curves. Now, there are other plugins that can do a similar thing. I think M Freeform Equalizer is free. I don't really quite remember. I know that there are some free Melda plugins. I can't really remember if this is one of them, but nevertheless, it is a cool plugin to have because when you're doing, drum sound design like this, it really kind of helps, almost force your drums into kind of the proper kind of professional kick. So we have M Freeform EQ loaded up here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a kick drum that I like, and we're going to use it as like a reference for the kick that we're making. So I think, again, for recognizability, I will just pick a Virtual Riot kick. I like this one here. And we'll take M Freeform EQ, we'll put it on our reference kick, and we're just going to solo it here. And then here we're going to click Automatic Equalizer, and we're going to click Analyze Ideal, and then we're just going to play the kick. And then stop it, click it again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this exact same instance of Freeform EQ, we're going to put it on the kick we've made, and we're going to hit Analyze This. We're going to solo our channel. And then we're going to click EQ green to sound like red. But this range knob here kind of is your amount. Actually, I'm going to put this on the actual Serum 2 instance so we can edit this if we need to, but and I'm going to put another disperser on it, another all-pass filter. Now I'm just going to kind of dial this kind of high-end. And something else you can do too, I like to use Pro Q4 for this. You can set your reference kick as the sidechain input, and then it will show up here. The sidechain input is in the red. And this is another way you can kind of shape your kick to sound like more like your reference kick. Again, I keep going back into Serum just to kind of tweak things around on little kind of increments. Again, it really helps with like creating unique timbre and whatnot. Another cool plugin trick that I would recommend, and this one is pretty interesting, but if you have plug data is like a kind of free and open source plugin programming thing. I don't really know if I'm describing it right, but whatever. NASCO has his own kind of plug data patches, one of them being Spectral Clipper, and I think this is really good for drums. I'm putting this before the EQ, and also I'm just going to load up a oscilloscope after this, just so I can see what's going on here. And this is really just to like get all the frequencies at the same level. And it adds some nice drive to it. And now I'm just going to add in this clipper here. This is a clipper I use called V-Clip by Ven Audio. Very good soft clipper, but you can really just use any soft clipper you have. And something else cool you can do to shape the sound, this is a free plugin, I'm pretty sure, is you can use Kilohertz Transient Shaper. And with this you can do things like change the transient amount. You can add this pump to it. And then another thing I like to do occasionally is take a compressor here, and I'm actually going to put this compressor before the EQ. This is kind of an analog recreation of a compressor, the 1176, like I was mentioning earlier, but this is kind of the real deal. I mean, it's not the real deal. You have to have the real kind of rack unit to have the real deal, but I like this because it adds really nice snappy compression along with a little bit of unique saturation. It adds a little bit more flavor to the harmonics. And this one here is a UADX 1176AE, so the blue stripe, I think people call it normally. But what you can do is you can take, turn on ratio 2 and 4. Under attack here, click this little thing that says slow, and then the release, put it all the way up. And then if you increase the input here, you can hear the kind of oomph that it adds to the sound. One other thing I'm going to do for just kind of safety measure is right after the disperser, I'm going to put a linear phase EQ. And this is just kind of get rid of any really unneeded low end, like super, super low end that doesn't need to be a part of the sound. You don't want to do too steep of a curve, otherwise it will kind of create a resonant peak. But you can just do kind of maybe a 18 decibel per octave slope, even a 6 decibel per octave slope if you wanted. But it gets rid of any unneeded frequencies in that super, super low end. It'll preserve some headroom for your sound. I think that kick is pretty well done, so we'll just bounce this to a new track, and look at that. It's not a bad looking kick. Actually, I think I'm gonna just put a little bit more V-clip on this. And there you go, you can render that out here. And that's a pretty nice looking kick, not gonna lie. And then you can also maybe just edit it a bit more, maybe get rid of any kind of tail end, unwanted, unneeded tail end. And then there you have it. You got a nice ready to use kick drum, and you can just export it and create your own personal kind of sample pack. So that's how you make kicks. Pretty cool, pretty fun. Now let's get on to making snares. So I'm actually going to use a sort of template just for convenience sake. Now, unlike my kicks, I like to make my snares in separate layers, just because I find that the processing when it comes to 2 different layers is a little bit more finicky, so it's easier just to have 2 different kind of instances of Serum doing 2 different things. So I'll start off, this is the fundamental. So kind of the same idea as a kick drum. I would usually make my transients myself. I think in this case, for this template here, I just use a different kind of transient, which is just a really quick kind of clicky attack from a sample I got somewhere. I don't really remember where this is from, but it's kind of the same idea as making a transient as I did earlier. Now for the wavetable, we have this warm sub wavetable right here, which I got from, which is in the Serum 2 wavetable pack. And you'll see a lot of people, again, for snares and stuff, just using a basic sine wave. Similarly with the kicks, I like to have something with a little bit more harmonics added to them. I think it's more so important with snares though, because I find that with just straight sine waves for snares, they tend to sound kind of a little too ringy and hollow with just a straight sine wave. If you have something with more harmonics added to it, I find it makes it sound a little bit more boxy and punchy. So again, same idea with the coarse pitch here, amplitude modulation on the level here, random phase also on the oscillator A. We are also doing a Combs filter thing with the transient here, like I was doing with the kick, which again just kind of adds to the character. And then in terms of processing, there's just some distortion on this. Very quick distortion. I think it was just to boost the transient, but that's because we're distorting the fundamental with the tail of the snare afterwards. So this is the snare tail, and all that's going on in here is just the white noise, Serum 2 white noise. I really love the new Serum 2 white noise because it has this stereo knob and there's a built-in filter to it, which I feel like makes it really like way easier to get I guess, nice kind of clean sounding white noise, if that makes sense. That probably doesn't, but you know. We have filter 1 set to HP12, which is just a high pass filter, and we have the resonance up. It's set to a specific frequency around 1K, and the reason why around 1K is because that's where that really airy, kind of breathy snare sounds. So if you take the filter off, like that sounds boring. When you put the filter on, that's where that kind of really breathy kind of ka sound comes for the snare. And we have a little bit of reverb on this. We're automating the reverb as well. Here, I think I'm automating the level of the white noise. So nothing crazy going on in here. Now, from this point, what I do is I will bounce these two to audio. And I do this because I want to be able to mess with the fades more carefully, I guess. So we're not really going to do anything to the fundamental in terms of processing. We are going to do some stuff here to the tail. So here on the tail, first up, M freeform equalizer. Same idea as with the kick. Just take a snare that you like and then just reference it and then make green sound like red. I think in this case though, now that I remembered it, what I did do was I took a snare that I liked and I actually took the fundamental out with a fade, and then I took an EQ and I cut out the fundamental. So I just had the tail. So analyze ideal. Put it back on to your tail, analyze this, make EQ green to sound like red. And again, range knob is basically like your amount. Now, for snares, specifically the snare tail, one trick that I always do, which I think is a really good way to make your kind of snare sound super fresh, is if you add a hybrid reverb, if you add a convolution reverb, and then you literally can put any sample you want in there. Personally, I find the best samples to put in are like claps. I'll take this here, this metallic clap, for example. And on the hybrid reverb, if you have hybrid reverb, put it to convolution mode, which means the algorithmic reverb is not going to be doing anything. And I have this actually in a audio effect rack, so we have a dry signal where there's nothing on it, and then just 100% wet. You don't really have to do this, but I think I did it in this case for whatever reason. The size amount here is the kind of pitch of the sample. And I always like to take the attack out. It's not really necessary. And a little bit of pre-delay. And then already that snare's sounding really nice. Now, fun ways you can manipulate things around here. On the samples themselves, take off the warp. And then just like this, you can change the pitch of the fundamental. And you can even change the pitch of the snare tail. And like I said, in audio format, you can really quickly and easily change the fades of stuff to make things sound tighter. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And then in terms of post-processing, I processed this as a group, but I put a saturator here, a soothe. I think soothe 2 or just kind of any resonance suppressor can really help in this case. It's not doing too terribly much, but I can sense it's a little bit nicer on the ears. Some compression. In this case, I used the Pro C2 and V-clip, just to make everything nice and loud. And you can do more, like add more reverb, add more distortion, add some other unique plugins, but this on its own is a really cool sounding snare. So we can take this and we can open a new audio channel, put the input as the snare, and then we just record it. And that's a good looking snare. And then you can, again, render that, and there you have your own private snare for your own private sample pack. Epic. All right, last but not least, let's make a clap. So I would argue claps are probably the hardest to make, just saying. It's really finicky because you're gonna have a hard time trying to make things sound natural. So just for simplicity's sake, again, I'm just going to use a template that I have loaded up here. It is similar to making a snare in some cases, and I use a lot of the same techniques, but again, I find it's really tough to make claps from synthesis to make them sound really natural. So here's what I have here. So we're gonna just turn off all the effects here. So in Serum itself, we start off with a triangle wave on a wavetable oscillator. And this is kind of our transient, because with these kind of rhythm claps, the transient at the beginning, it's kind of high pitched and it's very sharp, and it wants you know, the goal is to kind of make it like really metallic. So it's a really nice kind of plucky kind of sharp hit at the beginning, which gives it that I guess kind of crack. And then we have 3 oscillators here that are doing noise. So they're all on pink noise, and I'm using pink noise instead of white noise because pink noise is more flat when it comes to the frequency spectrum. If it's white noise, it's more of it's on the high end. With pink noise, it's all kind of flattened across the frequency spectrum, which makes it better for claps because then you can get more out of the kind of range where claps usually sit. So these two are doing completely different things. So oscillator B, this is kind of what makes the other kind of half of the transient aside from the sine wave here. And this shape is very kind of common. Like when you see a lot of claps, like the samples, they kind of begin with like these few like really short transients. This is what kind of emulates that. Again, we have it on envelope mode and Hertz mode. And I just have it on here to change the speed just for convenience sake. And then oscillator C with the other noise kind of does the rest of the tail, but on like a lower pitch, on a lower octave, as you can see. The pink noise here does the same thing, but kind of up higher, and it's more wide. And then the filter, again, just like the snare, that kind of resonant ka sound, that's like where the clap kind of comes from. So then in the effects here, we got some distortion, some multiband compression, and a plate reverb, which is being automated. Doesn't really sound like it's doing too much, but anyway. And then now in terms of post-processing, again, kind of similar to how you would make a snare. So first I have a frequency shifter. This isn't totally necessary, but I just did it to make it sound kind of lower. And then we do the hybrid reverb thing again. And again, I used a clap sample that I like. In this case, I used the Virtual Riot Rhythm Snare. Everyone might know that one. But what I did differently, again, like I did with the snare tail for the reference, I took the sample and I put it into a EQ, and I cut out the fundamental just so I could have the clap sound, and then I resampled it and then used that for the impulse of the convolution reverb. And then I also did the same thing, but with the freeform EQ as well. And now that's starting to really sound like a clap here. So then glue compressor, limiter. This is just a soft clip. I love the new Ableton limiter. They fixed it so fucking well. I can't believe it. And that makes it really snappy there. EQ, get rid of any unwanted low end and just kind of tame the highs a bit. And then Soothe 2. And then from there, I basically just resampled it, and I think I did a little bit more processing here, actually. It looks like I did. So what I did here, now this is a fun trick that actually gave some pretty cool results, is I took this other plug data patch from NASCO called Phase Shift, and you can hear it kind of gives that kind of whipping sound, which I thought was really cool. But if you have this, what you can do is you can just kind of click this button here, and it will spit out new kind of randomized shapes for the phase. And if you don't know what this does, it's kind of technical, but basically it's taking the phase of every single frequency and pushing it in one or the other directions, which gives it kind of a lasery sound, which is exactly what an all pass filter does with the disperser, but this is a little bit more controlled, so you can actually get more interesting sounds with this. And then I have, what do I have here? Oh, and I have another spectral compressor. It's actually not doing anything. Another soft clipper, just to make it louder. And then another soothe. And that's basically your clap. Obviously, this, again, is the hardest, I would say, to get it to sound like, you know, truly kind of natural and perfect. But this is definitely a good starting point, and the rest is just kind of trial and error. So that just about wrapped things up. Hope everybody watching who stuck around to the end learned something. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know in the comments below. I will be leaving the presets for this video, the Serum 2 presets, also in the link in the description. So if you want to check those out, you can do so. And other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, hope everybody learned something, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace out.